Hey everyone, and we're back with the Beyond Extend podcast. And as always, we're here with myself, Timothy Dries, and then on the other side we have Johan William Lofner. How's it going, man?
With the full name, huh?
Look, I'm trying to get better at it. I'll need to.
Right. Nice. Yeah, you did
How are you
you did
doing,
a good
buddy?
job. I'm doing very good. Doing very well. There's it's we just talked about this. It's actually really snowing here in Berlin.
Yeah.
Um yeah, actually even last night I did I took a little walk. It was great cuz all the snow was still untouched. Like I don't know, maybe what is it? Like 5 to 8 centimeters maybe. But yeah, it's
Is it
it's
that
really
much?
nice.
Yeah,
It's
but
yeah, it's I, at least it's yeah. I mean,
it's
in Berlin, it never stays that long, right? Especially on the roads and on the sidewalks. It's slush in like a couple hours. But in
yeah,
the parks
exactly.
and on the cars and stuff, it's still pretty nice. Especially, I live right next to a river. Took a little walk, was very nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we're looking forward to going out after the podcast and just enjoying the good crunch, not the
Yeah,
bad
the
crunch that
good
we always keep
crunch.
talking about.
Wow, straight into
um,
it, huh?
yeah, exactly. But we were talking about it on the Discord, and some people got confused because I was talking about crunch, and they were like, "What? Like, isn't crunch supposed to be bad?" No, no, I'm talking about snow crunch. Like,
Oh, right.
but anyway, so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna do something a little bit different, right? So I've been doing these AMA Sundays like every Sunday on Twitch um, at 1 p.m. Berlin time. If you're interested in joining on twitch.tv/Timothy Dries, if you want to check it out. And then from all these questions, it would be nice to just go through a couple of them together with you and just do like a Q&A kind of session as a podcast and just like really go into the weeds of like all these questions.
Yeah, nice. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? We stopped doing the Patreon questions at the end of the podcast, so now we can have all of them together in one.
Yeah, exactly. Make like dedicated episodes throughout the year. Um, and then also spend like more time on it because before like the Patreon questions were always kind of rushed, right? Because it was always at
Yeah,
the end of the episode. So now we can dedicate like the a full podcast episode to it. So,
great.
you ready, man?
I am.
All right. So the first question is from Ben Black. At what age did you know you wanted to be an artist or define yourself as one? So
Ooh.
this one, I think I started my story because the earliest thing that I can remember was playing Revolt on like the PS1, I think. And then always stopping on like cool frames to to basically draw from the pause menu. So I would like
Right.
draw the cars and like draw like little basic environments around them. And it would take me like a couple of hours just sitting there in front of like a pause screen just like drawing the cars. Um so I think I brought that up as like my first moment that I realized that I wanted to be an artist, even though it wasn't. I mean, we're talking about. I don't even remember what age we're talking about, but it was
Yeah.
definitely not conscious, right? You're not thinking about like, oh my god, this is my entry into like.
Yeah, this is
Um,
gonna be my career. Like that's not. Yeah, you're
I
just like,
wasn't
oh,
thinking about
this is
that.
fun. I like
Yeah,
cards. I'll draw some. Yeah, exactly.
exactly. So yeah, I guess that's sort of where I kind of began doing that, and I kept up drawing for like a really long time. I think up until I got into uni because I got into uni for concept art
Mm.
and I really wanted to pursue like concept art. But then I kind of fell into this black hole that's called environment art, and I don't think I'll ever manage to crawl out of it.
Happens to the best of us, man.
What about you, man? Like, when did you discover all this?
So interestingly, it's actually I've got a similar thing like you, right? So I did some stuff while I was a kid where yeah, I didn't think about having it as a career, maybe even about video games in general, but I always my mom's an artist. Obviously not a 3D artist, but just a regular like a classic artist and an illustrator. And
Hmm.
so I've always drawn my whole life. It was always great fun. But I remember in primary school, elementary school, whatever, when I was like, yeah, what are you then? Like 9 years old, maybe 8 years old. I would in the breaks, I would like grab a big sheet of paper. And I used to do this all the time, and then I would play. I think I just called them like levels. That's what we called them with my friends, and it would be pretty much a video game that I would draw on paper, and I would be like the game master, right? So it would be like some kind of simulation city building game, and I would say like, okay, you need wood, and then there I would draw a little forest. Then you had to be like, okay, I'm gonna get some wood now, and then I can build a house, and then I would draw a little house, and that
Hmm.
and it's literally like a video game, and that's what we used to do. And there was like, I don't know, some games that were kind of like Sims, right? And a level that was kind of like a Total War type thing where you like have armies and shit. And that's I used to do that a lot. Like you know how sometimes everything kind of blends together, but I remember doing that a lot with my friends.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of
So
like a
that
kid's version of D&D.
yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, it's like a tabletop kind of game, and yeah, and I would have all these like sheets of paper in my bag that would be like these huge ones that I had folded together, and it would be completely like because I don't know, it was like crazy because it got really full, obviously, right? Because I didn't erase stuff. I would just draw over the stuff I'd already drawn.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I would make this elaborate like UI for it. It was actually it would be great to like look at them now. Um, but so that was like really early on. I actually then had it was like a dad of some other student who I think he was something like a programmer or he did something with IT, and he had like an after school program where we would all get together in the computer room of the school and we would use Scratch. I don't know if you know that software.
No, no,
Um,
never heard of it.
yeah, to make our own games. So Scratch is pretty much like an interface for making games that doesn't really require you to know how to program or write code, but it kind of works the same way. So I guess it's kind of to train kids to be able to do code
Is
because
it
what it
kind
is,
of like Game Maker or something?
I don't know. I've never used Game Maker, but
Okay.
it's instead of using lines of code, you're using like Lego blocks, right? You're using like blocks that have if the number is bigger than this, and then you put another block on it, then do this, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you're pretty much you're writing code without having to write code, and yeah, we used to draw stuff and then make games out of it. It was great. So that was like the first thing we. I think I talked about this before. One time, the guy came in and he had a 42-page documentation for Blender, and he wanted to show us Blender, and I was like, "This is stupid. I hate this software. 3D's for idiots. I never want to do this." Right. Um, so yeah, I guess that was the earliest. So I would say like maybe around 8 or 9, and then at like 15 or 14 is when I actually started. I was introduced to like 3ds Max, and I decided, okay, this is awesome. I wanna a little bit more seriously.
Hmm. Oh man, that's crazy. You brought some memories back as well because I used to do the same thing, like drawing the levels.
Really?
I Yeah,
That's so cool, man.
we I was playing this game, like this is my first MMO that I ever played. It was called Tibia. And it was basically you would move on like square blocks. It was all like really rigidly grid based. So what I would do is I would draw my own levels on like square I don't know, like squared paper because it already had the shape of the levels anyway. So the I only needed to draw like the contours and like draw the little connection pieces and all that stuff. So I would kind of do the same thing as well. And then but I we never really played them. I would only
Right, you
like
would just
design them sorta and then just look at them and like play them in my head, but never play them with other people.
yeah. That was the main thing for us like back in school, we would like I would pretty much all I would do is I would prepare like a UI for the game, right? And then so it would say like money and this is like your avatar and this is so that would be like in like the Sims type game and it was like I would do like a bar that said hunger and that's one of the things that I would draw in pencil so it would be like fill up and then I'd erase it again and make it more empty or it was and the cool thing about it I guess that's also the cool thing about D&D. I've never played it but I would understand that that's the cool thing about it is that you're unlimited in your possibilities, right? So
Mhm.
instead of having to kind of play around inside the boundaries of what the game world gives you and what all the features are, you can just use your imagination and say, okay, so yeah, it would be like I don't know. I remember the person didn't have enough money to like go buy a house or rent an apartment, so they had to like rent out an extra room in someone else's place. So I drew like some old grandpa's place, and then there was like a little tiny room that they lived in. It was something. It was like stuff like that, you know. It was actually really great. Yeah, it was it was like artistry wise, it was super crude, right? Because it had to be quick. Because I don't know, we had like 20 minutes of break. And I just scribbled down everything, but I think my mom actually framed one of those pictures just because it's so crazy. It was like the it was like the battle of I don't even know what it's called in English. Minas Tirith in Lord of the
Yeah, yeah,
Rings.
yeah.
Yeah. So
It's the
with
same.
like right, yeah. So with the big elephants, and it's just a bunch of stick figures and elephants and stuff, and there's just lines going across the thing because it's like arrows shooting from one side to the other. It was like complete. It was a complete mess, but my mom found it charming, I guess. But yeah, so that was a crazy little thing. But I guess yeah, it's kind of what I do now in a very abstract way,
Yeah, yeah.
very
Like
very abstract.
a more evolved, refined way
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
drawing
that's
stick
it.
figures.
Exactly. It's a little. I do a little bit more than that now. At least that's what I tell myself.
Yeah, at least we pretend to do more than that. But yeah, this is actually like an interesting part of the question too, right? We're basically talking about the first part of the question where that's sort of how we kind of knew, even though it wasn't conscious, like that we wanted to be artists or like do something with this because it was fun.
you
But when did you start thinking about defining yourself as one? Because I'm thinking about this period where I was I was really into drawing, and this is like 14, 15 when you were discovering 3D. I was discovering illustration and tattoo design and all that stuff. So I was really getting into like becoming better at like designing stuff and like trying to especially for tattoo designs, I would really focus on like bright colors and like try stuff out with that. And then
did you
eventually, yeah, go on.
did you think of becoming a tattoo artist?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like maybe at some point I didn't want to become a tattoo artist, but I was really enjoying like the drawings, like sort of like the pre-production of it. So I could like
Right.
design the tattoos, but I never had the intention of becoming like a tattoo artist.
Maybe you
But
wanted to be like a Ed Hardy clothes designer
yeah,
with like the
hey, no
bedazzled
man.
tattoo designs on the hoodies.
But I actually around that time, like 15, 16 years old, my friends really got into tattoos. My friends were mostly older as well, and they were like, I still remember the first time when a friend of mine asked me like, "Hey, can you draw a tattoo for me? I'm gonna get it in like a month or two." I was
Nice.
like, "Okay," like not really thinking about it. And when I say drawing, at that point, it was more like taking a Google image and then spicing it up a little bit and like cleaning up like the faults, right? That was
Right, right,
literally
right.
it. Because he just wanted like a Grim Reaper with like a different kind of sight. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. But yeah, I mean, he's still walking around with it. So
Yeah, that's actually crazy. I mean, because I have a lot of tattoos, but yeah, it's actually crazy to think about. Like if you design it for someone else, right? They're gonna have it for the rest of their life. You're just
Yeah,
gonna run around with stuff that you thought of. It's great, especially
yeah,
at like such a young age.
yeah. My girlfriend has one that I designed too. Um,
Nice.
and I don't know. There's like a couple of other people that have like a tattoo. I think I did 5 or something. And that's when I really started thinking about like, hey, maybe there's something here. Like
Right.
consciously thinking about like, hey, maybe I can get a little bit of money from that because they would pay me for the tattoo designs as well, right? It wasn't
Hmm.
like it wasn't crazy, but it was like, oh, I can make 10 euros for like one drawing. This is mind blowing, right? Like the first experiences of like actually getting money for the tattoo design.
Yeah. That's yeah. I know exactly what you mean because my thing that I did also at like I don't know probably at around the same time, right? Like around 8 or 9. What I did was I mean around the same time as the level thing. Um,
Hmm.
I I was always drawing comic books. That was my thing. I wanted to become a comic book artist. That was my dream from when I grew up. I loved Tintin, right? Tim und Struppi, what it's
Yep.
called in German. Lucky Luke, all that stuff. I loved it. And I had a couple of like I don't know, like themes, a couple of comics that I would work on, and I think I even started like printing them and selling them at like I think like a school event or something. I wanted like 50
Oh,
cents
what?
for like something. Yeah, it was like a 4 page a little comic, and I was like asking 50 cents for it or something. But yeah, so that was I guess that was like when I knew I wanted to become an artist. At that point, the comic book artist was what I wanted to be, but it was yeah for me it was like very early on. Like I said, I grew up with art, right? It was kind of like that's what you do. You draw stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because I was about to ask, like, your mom was probably like a big inspiration for all that, right?
Yeah, so she would have her like her working space in the apartment, right? She still has like a huge table with a lot of art supplies. So,
Hmm.
maybe some kids don't have access to that, but I always could just go into the big room and then grab a couple color pencils or some I don't know, some watercolor, right? And just draw and paint. I didn't I don't know. Like for example, right now I don't even have any actual paper in my apartment. Right? I think I have like a notebook, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't have any art supplies if I wanted to do anything. But yeah, I always had access to like good paper and good colors and all that. So yeah, and of
Yeah,
course
that's
also just seeing that is like when you grow up and I guess it makes you creative, right?
yeah, sort of leading by example and like taking that on and like being inspired by it. Because
Yeah.
I had the same thing with my grandfather. Like he was like into like drawing little paintings. Like he would
Mm.
paint like these little paintings of um houses in the winter that were like covered in snow, like some like very serene paintings, like just
Nice.
really really calming the mind. And like I still remember like talking to him about it, about one of his paintings that he was just finishing up, and it's like literally like a really small frame, and he would only do them like very very occasionally. So I only remember him finishing like 1 or 2 pieces, and the rest was already there. So,
Right.
but yeah, I guess that's where my inspiration comes from.
Yeah,
And
it's crazy how that can affect you, right? Just seeing that growing up.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, yeah, man, that's so interesting. Let's go into the next question.
Yep.
So, um, this is something completely on the opposite side of the spectrum. But how do you gain speed when creating full 3D environments? From Sebastian Bracht.
Oh. Um I mean that's a good question. First I mean, I don't know if you want to listen to me because I have been working on my scene for over a year now.
Well,
But
I think
yeah.
you're still quicker than me because like I scrapped my, I abandoned my latest environment that I was working on for like 2 years. So I mean,
Fair enough. Fair enough. There's a couple of things that you can do, right, to speed yourself up. What I like to do is get the base right. So I like to set up stuff that I like to set up first is probably my master materials and stuff. Um, At
Mhm.
least if you know what you're going for, right? So for me, I mean, I've showed you this even, Timothy. I like to start with the stuff that sometimes I'm the most interested in if it's gonna work the way I think. So I was like, you know, I was doing a snow scene. So the first thing I did was make a snow shader, and then do like a master material, see if it looks right, and then I would go and set up all the other master materials that I know I'm gonna need, like one for props, one for this, one for that. Of
Yeah,
course, you
yeah.
have to have some kind of experience to know what kind of master material is going to need, and then you do some kind of block out, get everything in there, and then you can start working on, yeah, like the big shapes, the big things. Then moving on to the props, and then you just have to export your meshes, export your textures, and plug them into your master material, like make a material instance or whatever, and plug
Mhm.
them in, and then you're already like set up, right? So it's that's what I would call like a preparation step. So that then later on in the engine, all you have to do is import your stuff, plug it in, and put it in your actual 3D environment in your scene.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the big one to start out with. Is just try to get like all the technical hurdles out of the way. And technical hurdles, it can be like the initial setup, like you just said, but it can also be maybe you're unfamiliar with like one aspect of it. So say you're pretty new at trim sheets. You want to get like to grips with it fully, or like understand it to a point where you can actually know, if you look at an environment, you kind of know how to break it up into like trim sheets and what needs to be unique and whatever.
Yeah,
Because I think if we're talking about, there's obviously a difference between um, us two as experienced artists compared to people that begin as an environment artist, where
yeah,
a lot of the beginning is just struggling with getting through like all the technical stuff that you need to get used to.
yeah,
The
exactly.
first one is probably going to be baking, and then you have the unique section of your environment done, but then you still need to um, go through like trim sheets and how to maybe reuse textures from like one material, use them on the next material to create something that looks new.
Yeah,
There's a lot of technical hurdles that you need to get over, and once you get over them, you'll that's personally for me, that's when I feel like, okay, I have all the tools that I need, and now I can just focus on creating the environment. Because
yeah.
yeah, just the technical hurdles in the beginning, I think that's what causes people to feel like really slow in creating full environments. You
Because
you
every
need
time you finish something, you need to go to the engine, create a master material, make everything, like set everything up, right? Instead of having everything set up already. Like if it, I'm not just talking about master materials, that's just like an example for me
Mhm.
personally. But
Yeah.
with everything, right? Like everything that you do needs like that setup step after it, instead of having it all done beforehand and just plopping everything in and replacing your block out piece by piece.
Mhm. Yeah, and also it's just the experience, right? Just
Yeah,
doing things over and over. Like if I ask you in this instance to do like a high to low poly mesh, that's going to be no issue. But if you're just
yeah,
starting out, you'll have to figure out why this part of the bake is not baking correctly, because you don't really know what the hurdle is there, or like what you're doing wrong. And it might be
yeah.
stupid stuff, right? It might be, I think this was brought up in the community yesterday. It might be that one of the sliders is just like way too high for the baking distance, for example.
Right.
It's like,
And then you're
okay,
gonna
yeah,
have
that's
stuff baking on top of each other, and it's gonna look horrible, and you don't know why.
yeah, exactly. But then if you don't know that that is that slider's fault, then you can just keep spinning in that loop for like hours, like trying new stuff. Like, are my meshes aligned? Like, what's happening here? Like, do I need to make a cage? And I mean, it can,
Cages.
yeah.
Remember cages?
Oh man,
Man. Marmoset for the win. Oh my god, Marmoset's so great. It
yeah,
it literally cut baking time in like 1/4 or something for me. Like I remember baking in Substance before I had Marmoset. And I mean, first of all, right, that's also a couple years back when I probably, like you said, I didn't know all the ins and outs of baking, so I would have a lot more baking issues in general. But
yeah.
then also just because of Substance, I remember like having skewing on some bolts that I would have baked on, And I remember baking it twice in Substance, once with average normals and once without, and then going to Photoshop and masking it out and painting in it. I mean, horrible. And now in Marmoset, you can just do the skewing painter. You can set the projection distance. Oh, it's great.
Yeah, man. Tools have come such a long way. But yeah, I mean, to come back to it, like it's to get all those technical hurdles out of the way first. But if say you're at that step where you don't really feel like there's technical hurdles anymore, definitely if you want to speed up your creation process for like full environments, try to make as much um try to build in as much modularity as possible. When
Mm.
I talk about modularity, it's not only trim sheets, right? It's also about the stuff that you brought up. It's making that one master material that you can just plop on like the next texture, swap the texture inputs, and then you're done. Because that's
Yeah.
also speeding it up. That's also making modular materials.
Yeah, and then stuff like having switches and sliders in your master material is gonna help a lot, right? Because then you sometimes you can put a texture into Unreal or whatever you're using. I'm just assuming you're using Unreal, and then you'll have like some problems. You're like, oh, this doesn't look too great. But then because of that little bit of time you invested at the start, you can just, I don't know, adjust the normal intensity slider. You can adjust your roughness maybe in your master material, or even do like a little tint, and then you don't even have to go back to Substance. You can just tweak it in Unreal and be happy with it, right? And
Yeah.
then also you can just copy it over, change the tint completely, and then you've got another material without having to work on stuff. And so that's, yeah, I'd say that's like a really big time saver, is having all of these systems in place that you can just yeah, like you said, copy over or whatever, plug in, put it
Hmm.
all, and
Yeah,
be happy.
and ideally you want them to be transferable between projects too. That's what
Yeah.
I'm really focusing on now, is whatever I create, or like whatever material setup that I create, I can just take that, do that, like port that to the next project that I'm building, and just have like everything set up already. The only thing that I need to do then is recreate like some of the inputs if it's like a completely different asset.
Sure. Yeah, but I know what you mean. It's great. I love Unreal for just being able to copy paste material nodes from one project to another.
Hmm.
Because yeah, I did like one master material 2 years ago, and all I've done since is just extend it for whatever I need, right? So if I'm, yeah, I did like a quick prototype of a snow scene, and I just took my blending master material from my Tokyo scene, and I added like some directional snow and some world aligned UVs, and then I've got my new master material for the snow scene. So it's,
Hmm.
you can have such a big time save. Obviously, if it's the first project you're ever working on, or the first project that you're seriously like setting up all these things, then you're not going to be able to copy it from anywhere. But it will save you time in the future when you're going on to your next project.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think yeah, those are like the two things to really get up to speed with just creating like full environments. Just like iterating on the workflow, and then just like trying to save yourself time by reusing as much as possible. And that's like we said, reusing materials, trim sheets, like all that stuff really speeds up your environment creation workflow.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say about that
Hmm.
is that modular material situation doesn't even have to be just in Unreal, right? Also in Substance. So, for example, with my Tokyo scene, I've got a couple of basic materials set up, because it's I'm doing a stylized scene, so it's a lot easier to just have like a smart material with some edge wear, some like, I've got this specific way of filtering the masks that it looks kind of painted and stylized. So all of that I've got set up in a smart material, and then I just plop it on and I change the base roughness value, the base color value, and then maybe do some hand painted stuff on top. But it
Yep.
means that I'm cutting my texture time in, like, again, probably 25%. So of course, with a realistic thing, it's going to be a little bit harder, because everything, you want to have a little bit more detail and wear and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
even then, you can make one good wooden material and then keep reusing it, and maybe changing the tint, changing the intensity of of like the wood grain, all of that. So yeah, don't create 1,000 wood materials or that for everything. Just yeah, set it up right, and then in Substance you can just plug in the stuff you've already done and be quicker about it.
Yeah, exactly. And the same applies for modeling too. Like if you really want
Oh
to break
yeah,
it
yeah.
down, when this is the thing, when we talk about modularity, people only think about like the modularity in the level itself, where you
Yeah,
have like facades that you can copy and then build like houses out of. Like no, modularity is something that you can do at like every stage of the process. Where
exactly.
with my kit that I'm building, for example, like I'm currently building a medieval market. Like whenever I need a plank, I'm not gonna make like a new plank. I'll just duplicate like some of the planks that I already have lying around, or I'll just strip one of the assets that has like the components that I want for like this
Yeah,
new asset that I'm making. So
yeah,
you're
exactly.
you're basically building your own Lego kit,
Yep.
which is super powerful, really quick.
And then yeah, I mean it's the same thing as I don't need to model a bolt 1,000 times over, right? I've got a
Yep.
bolt. I could just take it from the other scene. Of course, a bolt is, you're gonna model it quickly, but at least you're saving some time. And then, yeah, if you're even taking, like you said, like whole parts, like planks and stuff, and then you can even have a completely different texture on it later. But you already have that mesh and the UVs from it. You can chuck it over, plop it in
Hmm.
your existing UV map, and you're gonna be way faster than doing it all from scratch all over again.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Next question from Leon K. What is one thing or trick about 3D/environment art you learned when you started as a junior that made you think, "Wow, how could I not have known this?"
Oh,
I
I love that question.
Yeah, I love that question too. It's such a good one. And I think for me, it was when I started working at Frontier. I mean, it's first of all, it's so hard to pick that one moment because you're gonna run
Oh yeah,
into like all these moments where you're like, "Oh my god, how have I been doing this for this amount of time without knowing this?" But
yeah.
the first real one was when I started working at Frontier, and I was modeling something organic, and I had like a curved object, and I was moving the curves like manually, like really trying to make like a smooth curve, like
Uh,
based by just looking at it, and like going
right,
back to like front view, like aligning it, then going to top view, aligning this, and then it's just like lots of manual labor. And then
right.
one person came by, and this was in Maya, and they were just like, "Oh, can I just show you this?" And just selected the edge and did like edit edge flow, and it corrected the edge flow, and I was like, "Oh
Are you
my
a
god!"
magician?
Yeah, it was just like that is the biggest thing, especially in the beginning, where I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna use this on every organic thing that I'm gonna do now. Like, if I need to correct something, I'll just do that."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, it's so hard to pick that one moment because there's about 100 different ones that I can think of. But I remember, like, I had kind of heard of trim sheets before.
Oh,
Um,
dude.
and yeah, it was like this magic thing somewhere floating in the ether. And I had also like kind of heard of doing the mid poly face weighted normal thing, but
Hmm.
I for some reason I was not aware that you can combine all of this, and that's so great. Like if you have a big thing that you can't just put it all on one big texture map. If you have like I don't know a huge machine, then you can have the big parts be made from face weighted normals with a tileable on it, maybe even with vertex paint or some other kind of blending, right? With like a tiny mask, but I mean that was super advanced for that time. Let's just say with vertex paint, and then having
Hmm.
all the small details like the bolts and even like a trim sheet with welding and all the little I don't know like if we're talking about a big truck, let's say like the wheels, you would have all of that baked in a separate material, and then you would have the big parts in the with the tilables. That was a huge deal breaker, huge not deal breaker, huge what do we call it? It was huge game changer. That's what I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
thinking of. Huge game changer for me because then in my at the job and also in my personal work, I had all of these possibilities. I could combine things. And then the same was um, combining a trim sheet with a fully baked unique object, right? So if you have, I don't know, like for example, the ACs in my Tokyo scene, the AC itself is fully baked, just like a unique 0 to 1 type situation. But then at the bottom, I left some space for cables and like like the hose that goes into the AC and all of that stuff. And I made it a trim sheet, so then I can have these hoses and cables and all that stuff as long as I want.
Yeah.
So and that was like, wait, I thought a trim sheet was just one thing. No, a trim sheet can be just, you can have a texture that's half of it's a trim sheet and the other half is unique textures. And
Hmm.
that completely blew my mind. Like all of this combining different workflows, I think that's when I really started getting actually good at 3D, is when I understood all of that. And
Yeah.
because that meant that you just become so much more flexible in the future. For pretty much anything that you can think of, you're gonna have a solution in your head. No matter how big,
Yeah.
how detailed, whatever it has to be.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing. That's when you really feel like you've broken through this technical barrier and that you can really see like all the possibilities. And then that's where, going back to the previous question as well, it's like that's where you can really see like, okay, I'm building this environment, I'm gonna break this down into unique texture and a trim, but then this can be purely trim, this can be only tidables, and then if you break it down like that, you know what all these different workflows do, like
No.
it's so powerful. Like it's, I think that's when you really become creative again, because I think in the beginning stages so much is focused on the technical aspects and like breaking through like, okay, and now I need to learn this and now I need to learn this. And then once you have all that knowledge and then you can start juggling with it, I mean that's so powerful, man. So
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, it also means that you become more flexible with your budgets, right? Because you know, like I don't know, if there's like an asset that you need to do, but your lead tells you, hey, we can only have a 1K texture for this, even though to have it in texel density you would need like a 2K by 1K or something. But then
Hmm.
you can decide what's the important bits, what's the stuff that I want to fully bake, what's the stuff that maybe I can put into a little trim sheet on the bottom. And then you can get really, really creative. Some stuff that you would think normally you would have to do with a tileable, you can then all put in one texture, have half of it be like a trim sheet into one direction, and then you can like flip the UVs around and mirror the UVs, and then you have like this huge area that seems like it's using a tileable, but it's actually using half of like a 1K texture, because that's you did it in like a use your UVs in a smart way, right?
Hmm.
Um, all that type of stuff is so rewarding, and yeah, also like then if for example now if I look at an asset and I'm like, if I had this budget I would do it like this, right, to have the best visual quality. But if I had to go like use less textures, I would do it in this way. If I had to use less triangles, I would do it in this way, right? So you already have a plan for pretty much anything that life could throw at you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh man, that's so good, so powerful.
Yeah, those big aha moments are so valuable.
Yeah, but trim sheets, that's a good one, man. Just like the other workflows and like combining them. Oh man, that's such a good moment.
Yeah,
All
I've
right.
got half of my scene that I'm working on right now is trim sheets because they're the best.
I mean, 90% of my scene currently is trim sheets, so
Exactly. Yeah, I'm actually the only stuff that is not using trim sheets for me is the stuff that I was too like I don't know, I was too lazy to actually make a trim sheet, and I was like, oh, I'll just do this.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and also sometimes it's just more fun to do it uniquely too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Sometimes,
the thing, right? We have that liberty in our personal work where you can decide, hey, I could do this as a trim sheet, but what gives? I'll do it.
yeah, exactly. All right. Next question from Lloyd James. Do you have any concerns about your future as an environment artist? So, for example, technology changing the job too much, instability of the industry, or artist boredom. Just as an example.
It's a dark
Um,
one.
that is a dark one. I don't really have any concerns, to be honest. So if we split this up, right? First, about the technology changing the job too much. No, not really. I think as an artist in the industry, especially the games industry, everything is moving so quick that I find it exciting to just move with the flow and like explore new things and like explore new technologies.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also a big part of this is that the industry itself will always move a little bit slower than you're used to outside of the industry. Because
Yeah.
I mean, multi-million dollar engines and all that stuff. There's only so much. Like they're fairly rigid, and they take a bit of time to like steer in like a new direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of inertia, right? It's
Exactly.
it's it's very much so that, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is true. I can't confirm this, but I heard that, in 2017, Crytek was still using Max 2011 because all
Yeah.
of their scripts were like, they didn't need to upgrade to a new Max version because they had all their scripts already in place to do all the stuff that came with the updates. And
Hmm.
especially because I know I remember downloading Crytek Cry engine a long time ago. I know that it's like a very specific engine, right? With like a specific, I'd even put like an FBX in, I'm pretty sure. So, they had their specific workflow and it all worked. So it would have been like a huge chunk of development and work time to then switch over to, yeah, a completely new software or to the upgraded version, and then you have to redo all the scripts or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think with that technology angle, a lot of people are concerned, especially when it comes to environment artists. They're concerned about Houdini. Houdini seems to be like this big thing that is coming up and is gonna change like everyone's jobs completely.
Yeah, I'd say
Um,
there's probably two things, right? It's Houdini and Megascans, or just like scanning in general. I would say those are the
I'm
two big ones.
I'm not sure about scanning because scanning only applies to realistic texturing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. Of course. But I mean, that's still. I think it's still gonna be, at least in my mind, it's a big thing, right? That it means that you're probably never gonna have to sculpt rocks again because you're just gonna
Yeah,
scan a
yeah,
rock, all that
yeah. Like
stuff.
say
But yeah,
say for example, if you work at Dice, for example, where they do like a lot of scanning, the workflow might be like completely different compared to like another company. Yeah, that's true.
but yeah,
But
like you
yeah.
said, you can only scan stuff that exists, right? You're not gonna scan a spaceship because, well, those are kind of hard to come by.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why the Houdini topic gets brought up like a couple of times, especially during the AMAs, where people kind of want to know like what the importance of Houdini is going to be. And I think Houdini is going to be important, and it already is in a lot of
Yeah.
factors in the industry already. But I think when we're talking about environment art, your exposure to it is going to be only on, well, what you'd say, like the parameter side. When you have control over the recipe, but you're not gonna set up the recipe yourself. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. And another reason why I'm not really concerned about it is because you can already see that with all of the tools, right? All of the tools have come such a long way. All the techniques have been like perfected over, well, not perfected, but improved over the last, I don't know, 10 years, whatever. So, but we still have studios with 300 people working on a title for 5 years with support of like a 200 artists from outsourcing, right? So
Hmm.
it's not that, oh, because we have Substance Painter and Substance Designer and Houdini now, game making is the easiest thing and it's going to be done in 2 seconds, and then you're going to have a huge AAA title. So even if all we're going to do in the future is going to be putting parameters into Houdini and Speed Tree and Substance, right? All these procedural tools, whatever, and it, it- well, yeah, all it will all it will like affect is the size of the games. It's not going to mean that 100,000 people are going to lose their job. No, it's probably just going to mean that, you know games are going to get better and bigger, which is, the trajectory that has been happening over the last yeah, I mean 30 whatever years.
Yeah, yeah, like since all the way in the beginning, right? Like a
Exactly.
game like Cyberpunk like isn't possible. Even with like 10 years ago tech, like that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And it still has a lot of problems, right? Even though it's been worked on for 8 years or whatever,
mhm.
with I don't even know how many people. So yeah, it's you can tell, like, yeah, if the tools were better, then it would just mean that all the problems that Cyberpunk has, it probably wouldn't have, and maybe it would have been done a year ago. But still, it would have probably taken just as many people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like I mean, when it comes to the tools that they use, it's like kind of speculation, right? But like from the amount of people that are working on it, like that wouldn't change the thing. They would still have as many people working on it just because of the scope and the
Yeah,
size and like the detail. Like even if we're not talking about scope, like say the scope remains a constant, the detail is going to go up. So that
that's exactly
means
it, right? Yeah,
that means even more artists on it because you need like all the little corners need to be set dressed, all the little spaces that you would walk through, they all need love. And even in that instance you can already see that procedural set dressing is also becoming like in its infancy, right? But even then, if we're talking about environmental storytelling, that is going to take a long while before I feel the first strides are going to come into that. Where if you
exactly. Yeah,
if you really want to tell that story that is brought up with like the narrative designer, you as an artist are still going to go into that location and dressing it up specifically to tell that one story, because it's like the other procedural tools at the moment, right? Like it can do a lot of stuff really well, but if you want to do like specific stuff, it's still better to do it by hand.
I mean, right now there's no tool that can just do all the work for you, right? Everything needs human input, and I think it's gonna be a long, long, long time before that's completely gone, right? I think
Yep.
it's always gonna need at least some kind of human input. So yeah, there's if we look at like a game development cycle as a couple of sliders, right? So like people working on it, scope, detail, and then polish or whatever, right? Whatever you want to call them, the sliders. There's a lot of sliders that can still go up before the people slider will go down, is how I'm going to phrase it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just like
Yeah, I mean,
visualizing sliders in my head.
yeah, just all I'm saying is the games are just going to get bigger and it's going
Yeah.
to take the same people even though the tools are better. So yeah, maybe in 1,000 years when we've got it all figured out, then it'll just take a couple guys to make a game. But right now,
Yep.
yeah, I'm not really. I mean, until then, I'll be dead. So I don't care. I don't have any concerns about my job.
Damn. Okay. Yeah, you made this question even darker than it was. Thanks.
Yeah, right.
But what's also interesting is with all the stuff that we're talking about, it's somewhat focused on AAA, right? What I also really
Sure.
find interesting is that the better the tools get, the more procedural tools are becoming available, the more empowering it is for like the one person company. Whereas like,
Yeah.
okay, like they couldn't do like procedural texturing and make like, I don't know, make one texture that can do like 1,000 things, so to say. But now they have all the tools and they have all this proceduralism, all this automation that's coming into effect. Where I feel like that's gonna it's creating this like whole creative undercurrent of like smaller games that can really push the boundaries because they can spend the time where they want to, and then just let proceduralism and like automation like take care of like the stuff that they don't really want to do.
Yeah. They can take care of the quality, and then the procedural tools can help them with the quantity that you need.
Exactly. Exactly. The second part of this question is, and this is also an important one, the instability of the industry. In my opinion, there's a lot of instability in the industry, but most of that is located in the US. From my European point of view, where the the typical production cycle is based around this bloating of a company, and then hiring people for contract work and
That
then
is
letting them go after a year.
that's the most that such a horrible like business practice.
Well,
Hiring uh hiring
there's
a
like
couple
two
hundred people.
ways. Yeah,
I don't
there's
know.
like
I
two
hate it.
ways about it. I personally hate it too, but it's also because I mean we enjoy the stability of it, right? But like
Yeah. I
say if
like
you're
being
like
able to pay my rent.
well, me too, man. But let's say you're like a digital nomad and you want to see like a ton of places in like a really short time. You could kind of make use of that system and like travel across America if you wanted to. I
I mean,
mean,
sure, but I'd say that's only like a small percentage of people, and then
yes,
those
yeah,
people could just be a freelancer and move around, or like I mean they'll still be able to do contract work. It's just it's it's not going to be necessarily done after a year, right? You can kind of decide maybe, I don't know, but yeah,
yeah, that's
it's
true. That's true.
just like laying off hundreds of people. Just I don't know. I'm not a big fan.
Well, especially if we see the cases from like Blizzard, right, where they fire like
Or
500
800
people,
people.
yeah, 800, and then the next year they hire people for the same position, where it's like, yeah, they're just like kicking out people that they don't want to pay as much to then hire more junior people that they can pay less.
Yeah, and then the turnover also means that you have to onboard all these people. Like in the end, just have them maybe, I don't know, be on a little bit of a on the extra on the what is it called, the freaking bench. Have them on the bench.
Yeah.
Trying to do a sports metaphor, it's not working. And
The only sports thing I know is bench.
yeah, so have him on the sidelines, whatever, for half a year. Have him do some maybe some prototyping, or even just some personal development and whatever,
Yeah.
and then they'll be ready to start on the new thing. But of course that costs money, and whatever.
Do you
But
what is your view of instability of the industry itself? Do you think it's
yeah,
unstable?
so that's exactly what I was gonna say next. So in general, I don't think the industry is unstable. I mean, certain studios might have problems, right? And some studios will fall, and some others may rise, and all that. But um, in general, I think people are gonna want to play video games. I mean, if the last years have told us anything, it's that people like playing video games. And I mean, of course, right now it's at an extreme with the whole quarantine, working from home situation. People have more time on their hands because they can't go out and whatever. But
Hmm.
this everyone's playing video games, right?
Yeah.
So I don't see that declining at all. Maybe it's going to change. Maybe, I don't know, in a couple of years, if we're listening to some specific people, it's going to be all about AR and VR, but it's still going to be video games.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just gonna take different shapes. But when we're talking about instability of the industry, I never from again we're talking about like from a European standpoint, right?
Yeah.
From the jobs that I've had, from the jobs that I know that other people have had, there's a lot of stability here. So I wouldn't really be worried about that. Like you said, there are going to be companies that will will try to work with like the more American style of things, where they hire people for contracts that you kind of have to be like really good to stay on, or they will just let you go after that contract. But
Yeah.
I would say in Europe, and yeah, in Europe in general, like that's like the minority. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't be worried about the stability of the industry, and especially as an artist within it, right?
Also, if push comes to shove, and let's just say nobody wants to play video games all of a sudden, there's still like 3D in general has become so much more important, right? Like
Mm,
ads, movies, everything. Everything's using 3D. Just like graphics for like even like ArchViz, like 80% of the IKEA catalog is CG, right? I
yep.
mean, just stuff like that. It's just gonna. I mean, maybe it's not gonna be the same because you want to work on games, but let's just say from one day to the other, nobody wants to play video games anymore. yeah, then people are just gonna need 3D for other stuff still, and
Yeah,
you'll have something to fall back on.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So if we're looking at the question, right? Do you have any concerns about your future as an environment artist? Simple answer to that is no. In my case, I have no concerns whatsoever.
Yep, same. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Artist boredom. What's that about?
I think it's just becoming stagnant, and maybe pigeonholing yourself. Maybe that's like a concern that they want to bring up, because I've talked about that sometimes you make the, oh, what is that saying called? Like you make the bed that you want to lie in. So that
Sure.
if you for example, in my case, like I was doing some speed stuff outside of work, and then people at Frontier picked up that I was doing a good job with that. They wanted to, um, well, they had me working on foliage for like a long while, and I didn't really like that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
so it's that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
it's also looking back at it. I'll have to be really transparent too. That they asked me multiple times. I was always saying no, but maybe in a too joking of a manner, because I wasn't really sure about if I
Right.
wanted to do it. So then they could have perceived that as like, oh no, I think he wants to do it. And
I know
I
what you
know.
mean. Yeah.
So because that's the thing, right? Like I always wanted to challenge myself. So in that case, um, speech doesn't really do it for me, like creatively. When it's just like moving sliders and all that stuff to create like good looking trees. It can be fun for sure, but I was doing it for like 6 months on end, and I was like, nah, not really liking this.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I had a friend that worked on hair. I think for like 9 months straight. Right. Like a
Yeah,
character artist that did hair for 9 months. Yeah. Of course, it can get boring, but also in the end, we kind of. I mean, we do have to understand that what we're doing is a job, right? Like,
yep,
even
yep,
if you're working on something that you don't like for 9 months, well, I mean, yeah, you're still just doing a job.
yeah, and you're still making games too. There's
Yeah,
people
you're
that
making
do
games. Yeah,
there's people that do their day jobs for like 40 years and they don't like it. I
E-
mean,
exactly, right? Like I don't want to insult any kind of job, so I'm not gonna do an example, but I could be doing a lot of different things for 40 hours a week for 40 years of my life. And even though, yeah, maybe I'm not going to be able to have the perfect game that I want to work on or whatever, or the perfect thing that I'm doing, still, for me personally, I'd say doing foliage for a year is better than, yeah, like again, I don't want to make an example, but I don't want to do other stuff. So,
yeah, exactly, exactly, and I totally agree. But sometimes I think, especially in the beginning for me, I was still exploring stuff. I was still looking around. So, and I got to be honest about this. I'm also impatient. Like I'm pretty impatient when it comes to that stuff.
hmm,
Um, so that's also why I made the switch in the end. One of the reasons. But
right.
when we're talking about artist boredom, I mean, there's so much opportunity, so many different projects. Like if even if we're talking about like future stuff, from stuff that is not even in the works yet, from like companies that you haven't even heard of, like there's so much excitement that you can have for those projects, that there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be the next thing that might be different. But yeah, that's kind of it on that topic, right? Let's dive into the next one. So for someone seeking to enter the industry, would you say they should demonstrate only one style, like either stylized or realistic, or would showing both increase your chances? I feel like it could dilute the portfolio, especially if you don't have the time to choose each project carefully.
The question is all this time.
Yes. Um, in my opinion, I would, especially if you're starting out, focus on one thing. Focus on the thing that you enjoy the most. Is always the thing that I go back towards, because imagine if you're doing like realistic, but you hate it, and you kind of want to do stylized, but your entire portfolio is realistic, then you're probably going to get hired for like a realistic art position.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be working in that position for like a couple of years until you have enough stylized pieces to kind of make the switch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like the short answer to it, right? I would definitely start out with something that you like in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree 100%. Uh, for me, it was the same thing, right? I was like, I wanted to do probably, I like that's the thing. I didn't even know what I really wanted to do, so I just started out doing realistic things, and
mhm,
then I did one stylized piece for my portfolio, which is, I mean, I don't know if it's what got me the job, right? But it's what coincided with me getting a job. Um, but that was probably just because I was able to show a lot of different stuff in the stylized piece, right? I didn't show that I could texture in a realistic way, but I showed modularity in that piece and other kind of things that. So yeah, because at that point I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I didn't want to pin myself down to just realistic or stylized, because that was probably the first time I even did anything stylized. So I
mhm,
just had to try it out for myself. But yeah, if you already know what you want to do, then like you just said, having that focus is going to be your friend, because yeah, if you've got fully stylized stuff in your portfolio, but you want to do realistic texturing and environments, then what? Yeah, how should anyone hire you? Because they can't see that you can do realistic things because you're not showing them.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, so showing both, would it increase your chances? Um,
I mean, depends.
I think, in my opinion, yeah, in my opinion, from what I personally would see in like an interview situation, is that if you're constantly switching back and forth, I think you're just not really sure about what you want to do, and it might, in the worst possible way that I can say it, right? It might lack just artistic direction, that you still not sure about what you want to do even after like the couple of projects that um you want to do,
Yeah.
that you kind of showed off. But that doesn't mean that with a little bit of tweaking you can kind of direct your portfolio again, right? So say if you look at your portfolio and say, for the sake of example, you have 3 stylized pieces and 3 realistic pieces, pick the ones that look the best to you, focus your portfolio on that, and then try to get a job. And as soon as you get a job, do stuff on the side, like explore really what you want to do, because once you get in, you're not stuck. You can still move around. There's still like options for you out there, like even if you
Oh
want to
yeah.
switch it up completely. um
And there's going to be more options if you're already in the industry, right? So
yes.
so probably, like, if you don't mind working on something that you don't love, I mean, that's also just kind of what we're talking about earlier. Um, for a year, then it's probably better to just, if you've already got 2 realistic things, then yeah, just do a third one and apply, get a job, already have income, which is, I don't know. I think it's a plus. um,
Yeah,
and
I love
then
eating.
yeah, yeah. And then instead of having to do 3 stylized scene over the next year, um, to then apply for a stylized job anywhere, um, you just maybe you work on something realistic for, let's say, 1 or maybe 2 years. Do, like, learn a lot of things in your job, do some stylized stuff on the side, and then you can still go to your current employer and say, hey, is there maybe a project, if you're at a place that has like a lot of different projects, that has
Mhm.
some stylized stuff that I could try out, or you apply somewhere else. I don't know. It's a lot of different things that you could do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's also the important thing, right? Like, you're not stuck. There's so many options in the industry, so many options even within most companies,
Yup.
that that you can just move between stuff. Um,
Yeah. you're never gonna be pinned down if you don't let
Hmm.
yourself be pinned down, right? If you show and say to your employer that there is something else that you might want to try out, then at least usually you will have the opportunity. It may take half a year, maybe even a year until that opportunity arises, but still they'll have it in, they'll have it noted somewhere. Hey, William wants to do stylized now.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So be open about that too.
Yo,
Next question. Let's have a look. From Ioana Oprisan. Have you heard of a situation when someone was sacked right after being hired because it turned out that they lied or were worse in their portfolio?
ay, ay,
I
ay, 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 ay.
Yeah,
Ooh, this is a
this is a hot question.
spicy question. That is a spicy, spicy meatball right there. Oof.
I love this one because like
Ooh.
just to give you like an overview, right? When when these questions come in from the AMA, usually they come right before the AMA. So I
Right.
don't have any leeway to prepare myself for questions like that, or sometimes even come like during the Twitch live stream, right? So when someone comes out with like spicy stuff like this, it's so good, man, because it puts you back on your heels and you're like, oof, okay.
Yeah, that's a scary one to answer, I would say.
um, how did I answer this? I'm trying to think back because I think this was a fairly recent one too. Um, I don't think I've personally not had the situation where someone was sacked right after being hired because they turned out they lied. Because usually that's what the interview process is for, right? The
Yeah.
interview process is to sit down with you, listen to how you can explain the workflow, and kind of poke holes in your workflow and kind of see how you react to that. Because
Hmm.
even if you, I don't know, if you're kind of like a if you die hard and you want to get into the industry and you learn all the workflows by reading about them, there's still gonna be specific questions that during the interview get asked that will trip you up or might trip you up, even though you have no, in this case, like professional experience, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I think that someone getting sacked because they lied or were worse in their portfolio is probably the least, like, the smallest possibility of reasons why like that would lead to someone getting sacked right after they're being hired.
yeah.
Because even if like at my previous job there's only a limited interview and hiring process,
Hmm.
that will be the focus, right? That's what they like. There's a couple of things that they should test for at an interview, and the like seeing that you're gonna be able to work is probably the first one that like the most important one. Even if all the other stuff is gonna be stripped away, that's the one that they're gonna make sure is gonna be working. Some studios might not like have the time or the money to look into what kind of person you are. Do you fit the team, right? That would be the thing that probably gets left by the wayside in some interviews at maybe a little bit smaller companies. And I think
Hmm.
that's probably going to be the reason why people are going to be sacked right after they're hired, is because maybe they're going to do a good job, but they're going to be toxic or in some kind of way detrimental to the team spirit or the just yeah the whole studio.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Usually in in the interview process, like you kind of screen for that too, right? That's that's why
At least you should.
Yeah, that's why usually you have like an interview process where you can sit down with them. Well, I mean, COVID kind of screwed that one up big time. But it's always interesting to sit down with the artist and like just talk to them and see if they're like a nice and an open kind-hearted person, because there are people that are going to have an ego and you kind of don't want to have an ego working with you inside of the industry, because then
No.
they're not going to be really open to sharing their workflows. They're not going to be open to like working within the team even. And like you said,
Exactly.
those might be the cases where those are the most likely cases where you might get I mean, you're not going to get sacked for that right away. There's ideally there's still like a couple of talks between it, see if they can like help you out with anything, right? It's not I don't think in most cases it's going to be like, "Oh my god, you're not really working with the team, get out of here." That kind of situation, right? There's like a structure to it ideally. I mean, it's just a straight to the point kind of question, right? But it's a good one. I'm just gonna add this one little thing behind it where the second part of the question where they were worse than their portfolio. I would
Right.
say that in most cases that might
That's
be
the
the
case.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're working on your personal work. You put your heart and soul into it, and then like you mentioned before as well, and which I think is true. If you get into the industry, that is your job. There's like a lot of factors that come into it where you have like all the creative control in your personal work. You don't really have that anymore. So
You know,
there's like a lot of technical restrictions, a lot of creative restrictions. There's like a lot of workflow adjustments that you need to do. Not to say that games look worse than portfolio pieces, but there's you're not gonna have the same kind of workflow or like the same kind of speed behind your
and
uh
you'll have to learn stuff all over again
yeah,
as well.
exactly.
I think that's the thing. In the first month, you're gonna have to, I mean, do onboarding, all that stuff, and your productivity is gonna go down a lot
Hmm.
compared to what your portfolio might have been. But then it's gonna go up exponentially, right? You're gonna be able to learn from your peers and just master everything around you, and then bam, you're productive again, and you're gonna be better than your portfolio.
Yep,
But like you said, there
exactly.
is there is that different workflow, and that means there's gonna be some kind of transition phase
Hmm.
between.
Yeah, definitely that onboarding phase that you need to get through. But yeah, this is a really cool question.
Yeah, same.
Um, so should we do one more?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Yeah. Or-
All right. Um, let's go into this question from Leon K. Do you feel like the skill level required to break into the industry is getting higher throughout the years?
Huh. Wow. That's that's actually a really interesting question. I would like to know some kind of statistics on it.
Yeah,
You know what I
me
mean?
too. I think that's also what I kind of said on the AMA too. Like it would be kind of nice to have some sort of like comparison. Um, and the thing that I said, I think this might have been a while ago, is that there's more people trying to get into the industry. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
all know that. So with bigger masses trying to get into the industry, there's obviously there's more applicants, and there's also like a bigger choice of applicants that you can pick from. So I
Yeah.
think this is pushing like the skill level required to break into the industry up and up over the years because there's just more people trying to get in.
But at the same time, so that's why I was talking about like statistics. The scope and the amount of people needed for making games, and also the demand of people needed to make games, just because there's a lot more video games than there was 20 years ago. I would, or even
Oh
10
yeah,
years ago,
yeah.
right? So that's the statistic side of it that I'd be interested in like how many more jobs are there compared to how many more people want to have jobs in the industry, because maybe the studios themselves don't get that much bigger, right? There's only like maybe 150 people more, and like maybe only 30% of them are going to be artists,
Hmm.
compared to 10 years ago. But then outsourcing studios are such a big deal now. I think a lot of people, like,
Oh, that's
obviously I
true.
have
Yeah.
like a personal connection with it, right? Because I used to work in outsourcing. But all of the games that you play, if they're a AAA title, I would say there's a very, very high chance that they you worked with at least one outsourcing partner, probably upwards of 3, right? Like, it's actually crazy how many studios are like working on one game now, just because maybe you have like sometimes you have a company that has several studios and they might share work on a project, and then additionally you'll have like 3 outsourcing partners.
Yeah.
So I think probably it it's gonna be more. It's still gonna be a little bit harder because I think the amount of jobs created are probably a little bit lower than the amount of people that want to become artists in the industry.
Hmm.
But I don't think it might like I don't think it's as drastic because
Yeah, yeah. That's a good
yeah,
point because the industry is also creating more jobs.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
I mean he is specifically asking about the skill level required and not how easy it is to get a job.
Hmm.
Um, but if we would say okay how easy it is to get a job, of course it gets harder because everything gets more complicated. But then the resources out there are amazing now, right?
Yeah.
Like a couple years ago, you needed to go to a specific place or like know someone that could teach you, and now there's so many free and so many paid ways to get a basic understanding and an advanced understanding that could yeah lead to you getting a job because you have all the basics and all that stuff already.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Check out
yeah
beyondexcent.com.
exactly. That's
The
a nice
plug.
segue, nice plug. Yeah, but no, I mean that's the thing, right? So we have all these things that didn't exist a couple years ago. I mean, we
Yeah.
talked about that a little bit last time, right? Like how what kind of resources we use for feedback, even um, that has changed, and everything's become more accessible. Um, so yeah, I
Yeah,
think
exactly. Like it's like you said, more accessible, and it's also on the program front too, right? Like
yeah,
I mean, when I got started, I was doing texturing in Photoshop, like making all the
yeah,
layers
baking it in
manually
X
and all that
normal.
stuff. Yeah, making it next normal, working in UDK. Like everything is so accessible at this point, which is like really good, but it also means that more people can get in.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't really want to say either or, just because until I like get some kind of statistics, I, I can't say it because I don't know how many more people are there. It feels like a lot more people want to get into the industry, but that's
Yeah.
also because now I'm inside the industry looking outwards, right? So
Hmm.
and I don't have that comparison from a couple of years ago that the perspective switched for me. So it's really hard to answer. I would probably say, just from my feeling, I think the skill level um, is getting higher. Of course, the skill level of someone today compared to someone 10 years ago is way, way higher. But that's also just because everything's become more complicated, right? Like, have to know a lot more things because back then, yeah, you didn't need to do all that much, right? I mean, I don't want to. That sounds like I'm talking shit about artists from 10 years ago. Not at all, but
Yeah,
there's
thanks.
a.
I got in cheap.
But you know what I mean, right? There's a different there just because also the budget changed, right? Like back then, realistic texturing meant something looking good on a with a 256 texture,
Yeah.
and yeah, which has its own challenges, obviously, but you maybe didn't need to do other things as in a way that's as detailed. So I think this question is so complex. The more I'm thinking about it, that there's actually not really a way to answer it in a way that's fair. Just yeah, because
Yeah.
then I'm thinking about yeah, back then you had to have like the skill set. I don't yeah. Let's just say the skill set just changed, right? Like stuff that you needed to become an artist a couple of years ago, um, is different from what you need today.
I would say the skill level has definitely increased to
Hmm.
to break into the industry. Um, but yeah, it's sort of like how much has it changed, or how much has it like just become trickier, right? Because
Yeah.
um, like you said, you just need to have this broader knowledge about like all the stuff that you need to do now because it's considered standard knowledge for the industry.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would say the skill level required to break into the industry is definitely getting higher,
But it's also
but
it's becoming
it's
easier to get to that level.
yeah, exactly. Especially like you said, resources, programs, like just communities, just like everything is so easy to access now. Like if you really wanna get good at it, like the thing you do is just join one of those communities, get started with modeling, and like just ask like loads of questions. Where before it was like when we're thinking back at Polycount or something like that, where you could ask a question on Polycount, yeah, but it was gonna take a bit before you would get a reaction. Where now it's almost instant with like Discord communities.
Right.
Um, so like the pace of just you soaking in that knowledge is just so much quicker than it was before. But man,
And
it would be cool to see some statistics on this. I would be really interested in that.
yeah, totally. Um, and yeah, talking about these communities, what would be one that you would personally, recommend? Is there any any of them?
Whoa, nice setup for a segue, man.
Yeah.
That was good. Um, so there's definitely our community that you can join, right? So patreon.com/beyondextent if you want to have access. It is a paid community, however, but that's also how we keep it small, right? And I think that's where the power of a community comes from. Just having like a smaller community that that really focuses on helping each other out. Even though I say small, we just hit like 100 members in the community. So
Yay.
oh shit, going good. But yeah, if you want to join, check out beyondextent.com. Check out some of the resources that we put out there. Check out the Patreon, and also um, if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And
Yay.
yeah, it was awesome having you here, listening to all of us talking and yapping on about these good questions. And yeah, thanks Will for
Yeah, some
being
really
here.
nice question. It was a pleasure as always. Yeah, and now go and enjoy the snow, my friend.
Oh yeah, snow time. Talk to you all later.
Bye.